Welcome to Collage of Health. If you've been here before, thanks for coming. If you're new to the channel, thanks for joining us today. I thought I'd do a quick story on where Buddhism and Christianity met for me one day at a silent retreat in the area where I live, around the Asheville area. It was a retreat center, is a retreat center called Southern Dharma. And at that time, in the around the late teens of 2000, around 2019, I was going to a lot of silent retreats. And I went to various places and various sects of Buddhism to experience these week-long or day-long silent retreats. And I signed up in 2019 for one with Won, who runs a Sangha in the Raleigh-Durham area. And the type of Buddhism is called Won Buddhism. So I signed up for the retreat, not because I knew anything about Won Buddhism, but because I wanted to be out in nature. And this retreat specified that it was in connection with nature. So I go to the retreat, I get there, and everyone seemed to know each other. I was one of the few people who hadn't been a part of that Sangha. I might have actually been the only person who hadn't been a part of the Sangha or hadn't heard of Won Buddhism. So it was intimidating the first day. We got in a circle and Wangan had us say a descriptive about our name and then our name, so that we could go around in the circle. And the first person said, like, lazy, Lonnie. And then the next person said what their name was, and then lazy Lonnie. And the third person said the next two names and then their own, etc. And I was one of the last people in the circle. And I was one of the few people who didn't know the other people. But at that point in time, I didn't realize they all knew each other. And I was like, oh my gosh, these people have amazing memories. I feel so stupid. I don't remember all the names. And so I did this whole dance in my head, which was kind of meaningless because it's so much about Buddhism is losing the ego, right? So that was a good first experience at this retreat. So soon afterwards, we were still in the talking mode. So if you've never been on a silent retreat before, you often get to these retreats and you meet the other people and you talk for the first couple of hours. And then by dinner time, you have like kind of a conversive dinner with other people. And then that night you go silent and you don't talk, and many retreats, you don't even look at the people who are around you. You just look down when you pass people in the hall, and you do the dance at the doors, holding the door without talking to the person, or just walking through the door and letting them open the door themselves. It's kind of a whole thing. And often you feel really connected with people that you don't even look at. It's amazing. So anyway, it was before we went silent. I went back to my room, and my roommate, her name is Rebecca. She worked, I think at the time she worked at Duke, Duke. And she was part of the Sangha. And so I knew that we had to do a presentation on the last day, and we had to pick a piece of a passage within this book, and we had to talk about it to the group. And there was a good amount of people there. I want to say there was about 30 people. So I bought the book and I was reading through the book, and I thought, man, this book is really trite. It's not resonating with me. It just seems like a dumbed down version of Buddhism. And so she was really giving me a different perspective, and I was listening to her, but I was still kind of in that mode of, this isn't for me. I don't know about this. I really like this teacher, Wangan, but I don't know if I can do this. And she explained to me that Won Buddhism is a compilation of a lot of different types of religions put together. It actually pulls somewhat from Christianity and Taoism and other sects of Buddhism. And instead of having the Buddha as the, the reverent person, the Buddha, which, the Buddha existed, but the Buddha is a Buddha within. But rather than having a Buddha to somewhat worship, you have a circle, which is like a never ending, never beginning, no face, no eyes, no ears, kind of existence of just the one. It all exists in just the one, and that's like the void. And so I was listening to her and really appreciating what she said. So I decided to take a walk. So I was walking up this beautiful knoll that exists at Southern Dharma. And I started to talk to Sotesean, who is the founding master of this type of Buddhism. And the reason he, in the mid 1900s, decided to put this all together was he had a worry that materialism was going to overcome spiritualism, that there would be an imbalance. And the more materialistic a nation became, the more spiritually void they became. And so he worked very, very hard, did a lot of austeric, that's a word, practices to become enlightened. And so anyway, I'm walking up this knoll and I'm having this conversation with Sotesean, and I'm saying, look dude, I really like your teacher, Won. She resonates with me, but I don't know about this Buddhism. It just seems really kind of trite to me. And I know I have to pick a passage, and, I kind of was saying, I need your help. And he came right in more strongly, I think, than any other presence that wasn't in human form or form. And he said to me, drop what you know and follow the way. Now, if you know Taoism, you know that the way is, Taoism. It's a term in Taoism, but it was almost like drop where you came from and all your prejudice and, prejudges, and just drop in and just see what happens. And so I was like, wow, okay. And then I walked a couple more steps up, and Jesus comes through and he said, people who walk among us are free. And it's not, he didn't say this, but he intimated it's not an exclusive club. Kind of was like he and Sotesean were buddies and saying, we're free. Do you want to join this club? And if you want to join this club, just check it out. So I go back to my room and I pick up this book, and I was like, wow, man, there's so much in here. I'm going to read a little bit of it to you. If the founding master received a pregnant woman, he would always say, do not think harsh thoughts, do not say harsh words, do not commit harsh actions. So what he's done is he's taken all of these sects of different forms of spirituality and he's put it in a how-to book. So really kind of cool. So I'm reading this book and I'm like, wow, like this is all this wonderful advice. This is like this ascended master, and I have a book that he wrote. Very neat. So totally different paradigm. So that night I go to sleep and I got a message that I should take the cotton out of my ears. And once I felt like in my dream, somebody was pulling cotton out of my ears. And then I got the message, you've taken one giant step towards the great vastness. I was like, wow, cool, but just one step. And so it went on. So one day, maybe a couple days later, we are to meet with Won, and we're all given a time where we get to have a private meeting with her for about 15 minutes. It was probably a couple of days where we could meet with her, but it was my day and time. And so I'm walking to this little cute little hut to meet with Won. And I thought, well, I'm going to tell her this, that I met her teacher. And so Sotesean came through and he said, basically, let her know that she's like my daughter. And I felt like he was telling me this because he wanted me to be believable. And so I went in, I sat down, and we both smiled at each other. She's very pleasant, just big smile. And we looked at each other and she said, "How are you doing? How's it going at this retreat? Kind of, you're not a part of our Sangha in Raleigh, Durham. So how is this for you?" And I said, "It's great." I said, "Actually, Sotesean came through to me." And she looked at me and she was like, "He's dead." And I was like, "Yeah, I know he's dead, but he actually came to me." And she said she listened and she smiled. And I told her what he said and, how Jesus came through and then how he pulled cotton out of my ear. And she looked at me like, "Hmm." And I said, "And he just said to me, you're like his daughter." She kind of she took a step back and she said, "So many people who knew him, he died before she was born, said that she's like his daughter." And so I became more believable in that moment. And so I went on and I did my spiel at the end and I told all these intellectual people, a lot of Buddhists are very intellectual. They're not woo, they're not into psychic intuitive stuff. As a matter of fact, anything like that that comes through when you're on your mat is to not really be engaged with. It's just sensory input that you just see as, okay, it's coming in, I let it go. So when I told my story, some of them were like, "Okay." And one gun spoke up and said, "And he said to Chris that I'm like his daughter, and many people have said that to me." So she kind of made me seem a little more believable to her community. So we left the retreat, and for a year, so from March 2019 to 2020, March of 2020, right before the lockdown, it was pretty much those dates. It might have actually gone a little bit into the quarantine. I took a passage in this book and took that passage and then wrote my interpretation of it. So I had this um, practice that became part of my daily routine. And that was a really big connection with Won Buddhism and Sotesean and Jesus, because before that, Jesus had not come through to me. So I thought I'd share this story. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, comments, if you're part of the Won Buddhist community, I'd love to hear from you. Hopefully I gave justice to my little short spiel on what it's about. Thank you.